In the order for infrastructure, the first meeting, first committee meeting of the year for Peoria County Board, right? Um, for any of the new members, Jan always brings up a hard copy because we don't know how many people may show up. So if you would like to have a hard copy as well, where are they, Jan? Right out here in front. So if you want a hard copy, and I'm one of the guys that uses a hard copy fearlessly, and I have this in front of me as our agenda, the approval of our minutes, and I need a motion on the floor for that. Betty, seconded by Matt, and if you look at the minutes, and usually they're pretty often correct because Jan's pretty efficient and so forth. So does anybody have any corrections to the minutes? Any changes? Being no corrections or changes, going for a vote on this. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Ayes have it. Moving on to the next item of business, our sanitary district. Brian Johnson, please. He is the director, and he has been very, very efficient in coming to the meetings. He is visible, and he's very accessible for all you new members. He's open for phone calls and so forth, and if he's got a card, maybe he'll leave his card with you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You've got the floor, Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One thing I will note in our minutes for everyone that's gotten some attention lately is the potential for solar at GPSD property, including solar on a large chunk of old landfill property that we acquired about a decade ago, as well as floating solar on some of our final polishing ponds. So if anyone has any interest in that, see me or call me or let me know, and I'll be glad to answer any further questions on that. Thank you, as always, for having me.
Does anyone have a question for Brian? Thanks, Brian. Moving on to our next order of business. Mark Little on our facilities master plan. And Mark, thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. If you notice, I updated the plan with a number of the projects currently in process. These are all currently capital projects that I would call in flight right now. 2 still left over from 2022. And then all the current ones which we're working on either RFPs for or are in a different state. One of the things that was added, I believe, is on here. We've got another failed boiler at the jail. Happened a couple weeks ago. Actually, it failed inspection by the state fire marshal. Boiler's been shut down. We're looking at cost right now to replace that, and we're going through that process. So I should have an update shortly on that as we look at the cost to replace that. That was a boiler that's, Calvin, about 40 years old? Yeah, it's original, so rather than tear it down and tear it apart and try to fix it, we're looking at just completely replacing it. So, but it did fail inspection, so it had to be locked out and shut down. The other projects on the list, you'll see the number of those that are with Midwest Engineering and RFP right now. They're putting together plans and specifications for those. They've been doing a number of drone flights out at the jail and the JDC, getting roof information and concrete information and a number of that. They're putting those specs together. The other one that's on there is the IT space optimization and the public defender office space. We did get bids back on that on Friday. We had a meeting at 1 o'clock today with Dewberry to go through those bids. We've got a couple questions that are going back to the bidders right now to make sure everything's covered. And I believe our plan is still to bring that to the board by next week. So we got to finalize a few things to make sure everything's covered, and then we'll bring that forward. So we ended up with 4 bidders on that. So Any questions about anything on the list?
Okay, no questions? Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
And our first resolution that we have is going to be a joint resolution, and we need a motion to put this on the floor. Motion by Betty, second by Sharon. Okay, it's yours, Amy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is for funding for the township motor fuel tax account. As the new folks might not know, but the county oversees the township motor fuel tax program on behalf of the road commissioners. We work with the road commissioners to implement it as per IDOT specifications. When we do the budget, we estimate how much funding we will receive for the upcoming year. And we didn't anticipate that they were getting as much as they did. So we're asking for a resolution to add to the appropriation of what the township can spend. It is a township's money. We are just a pass-through agency, but we have to get appropriation from the board to spend it on their behalf. We're looking to take from the existing fund balance, so there's nothing additional is coming out. It's just the fund balance that we already had budgeted. There is money in the account. This is just an IDOT formality so we can spend it. I'm happy to clarify or if there's any questions.
Any questions? For you who are new and possibly not a road commissioner, because road commissioners, they know that our county engineer at the highway department, that they basically pass the money on to the road commissioners, and they usually are pretty friendly with them, and they get a lot of things done. Any questions or comments in regard? Okay, calling for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. And does anybody abstain?
Road commissioners.
The road commissioners will abstain. And Mr. Wendish? Yeah.
Are
I
you
said
abstaining? Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, we need it on the record, the abstentions. Thank you.
All right, next resolution. We got to hire an engineering firm, and you're going to find out as we go along, new members, that we do a lot of this because we're short of engineers, and the ones we got are great, but they can't do it all. So first of all, I'm going to ask for a motion to put this on the floor. Betty, seconded by Dylan. And we got Jeff up here.
I'm going to give a little background on this for the new members. We've been working on plans to update Maxwell Road from Illinois 116 near the jail all the way out to Middle Road and then Dirksen Parkway. Dirksen Parkway was reconstructed about 2 years ago. This project will go from 116 all the way over to Dirksen Parkway. We're looking at doing two separate projects. In 2024, we're going to rehabilitate the bridge that goes over the old railroad tracks. And we're also going to reconstruct the road from 116 to Faber Lane, which is right there where the Caterpillar generator or Altorfer generator plant is. In the following year, our hopes is we are going to reconstruct the rest of the roadway from Faber all the way out to Dirksen Parkway. Because we're using federal money, we have to do pretty long environmental studies, preliminary engineering, things like that. Because we have two separate construction projects, we split the engineering. We always have two engineering phases. We have phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 is usually the initial environmental studies, environment impacts, the very preliminary engineering, see what we need to do for the project. Phase 2 is the actual construction plans, where we're like, okay, this elevation from here to here, this striping, these quantities. We started last year on Maxwell Road. We did a phase 1 for the entire project, so from 116 out to Dirksen Parkway. We're now ready to enter into phase 2 for the bridge portion. So this agreement is for the phase 2 to do the bridge. So we actually have bridge plans, and the bridge project will be let for bids in November of this coming year, and then it'll be under construction in '24. The agreement in front of you said the amount was for $241,000. We had an error, and we needed to make an adjustment due to some environmental studies that popped up in the last phase. And so actually we'd like to ask for an amendment to the amount in the packet to make the amendment, or to make the agreement amount $258,600. So I can answer any questions anybody has.
That was going to be $158,600.
$258,600.
258, yeah. Okay. That's a little bit of a difference. Does anybody have any questions before we ask for the amendment? So it's costing us about $17,000 more, is
Yes,
what
sir.
you're saying.
Yes, sir. And it is work that has to be done due to some of the industrial background of the properties nearby. We need to make sure no pollution is creeped out into the right of way, and we need to make sure there's nothing we have to take care of during construction.
So does everybody understand that the added amount has to do with the environmental aspect of this particular project? Okay, who will make that amendment to this project? What? Danny, you want to make that motion? Okay. Any questions on the, I got to vote on the amendment, I know. All right, all those in favor of signify by aye on this amendment, please. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Discussion on that amendment, anybody? Okay. All right, coin for the vote on the original amendment, resolution with the adoption of this amendment, signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Ayes have it. I think that may have been the first amendment we've ever had in infrastructure. You guys are so efficient over the course of the few years that I've been on the infrastructure committee. I don't think we've ever really had an amendment before, have we, Amy? All right. The next resolution that we're going to put on the floor has to do with hiring another engineering firm, and need a motion on that. Betty, seconded by Sharon. Okay. Jeff, you got this one too?
Yes, sir.
All right.
So the federal government has a highway safety improvement program where they fund projects, safety projects, at 90% of the cost of the project. and they take applications almost every year. So we looked at some of the accidents across the county, and we were seeing that Hannah City Glassford Road from Smithville Road to Lancaster Road, it's pretty curvy, has rough shoulders. That we had quite a few accidents in that section of road, including one fatality from 2016 to 2020. So we put an application together, and we were awarded funding for the project. We were awarded basically $1.3 million for design, construction, and construction engineering of the project. The project will be paid 90% by federal funds, then the 10% will be on the county. We put out a request for qualifications for engineering firms to do the design. We are doing the phase 1 and 2 together because it's a small enough project. So we're doing both phase 1 and phase 2. Hutchinson Engineering was the highest rated firm when we did our RFQ, and so we'd like to award an agreement to them. Federal funds will account for 90% of the $130,000 for this agreement amount. The county, because it's federal funding though and it's engineering, the county has to upfront the cost, and then we submit back to IDOT for reimbursement. So once we get invoices, we'll pay them, and in the end we'll invoice IDOT and get 90% of that amount back. So looking at starting design here this year and potentially get it under construction maybe even next year. So we'll see how everything goes. So.
Questions? It's a safety project badly needed. As you read there, we've had some accidents, some that have resulted in death, and if you've ever driven that area, it is kind of winding and curvy, and they're gonna do the shoulders and widen those shoulders about 4 feet. And that's going to be a good thing for the people out in that area. And as you can see, it's only going to cost us 10% of the project, and this will be covered, of course, through the motor fuel tax, and we're setting okay right there from what we have been told by our highway department. Any other comments or questions? Calling the resolution for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Ayes have it. Moving on to the next resolution. Our annual materials that are needed by our highway department, the maintenance materials and so forth, and need a motion on that. Motion by Terry, seconded by Danny.
This is our annual, we go out for quotations every year for the materials that we need at the highway department. So this would be signs, pipe culverts, patching material, those type of things. And so we get the quotations. This is as per IDOT to see what the best prices are, what the availability is. And so we only purchase what we end up needing, but we have to get the prices secured ahead of time before we start spending any of this money. So we only buy what we need, but we have to have the quotations approved by the board. So that's what we're bringing to you today. So happy to answer any questions or clarify anything.
You individuals that are on this committee who are road commissioners, I thought maybe you might have some questions and so forth, but I figure you guys know more about this than most of us other members. No questions for Amy? All those in favor of this resolution signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Ayes have it. Moving on to our next resolution that we have here. It has to do with a transportation equity study, and need a motion on that by Sharon, seconded by Betty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. These are planning dollars that the county received through the Illinois Department of Transportation. This was to look at transportation and equities in the 61605 area. They're going to be looking at other studies that have been done and doing some surveys and working with some of the residents in that area to see what improvements could be made in this area. There is no cost to the county on this. This is paid 100% by the state, and the contract that you're looking at today is for Walker Consultants. We did a request for qualifications. We had 3 vendors. One of the vendors was unable to do the study, so we went with the next highest graded vendor, which is Walker Consultants out of Hoffman Estates, and their agreement is before you today. I'm happy to answer any questions on this.
Questions? Jimmy?
Amy, for the sake of everybody, could you explain what the background is for this? Like, requested by residents? Did it come from the Racial Justice Equity Committee, or?
This was initiated before the equity committee was put in place. So this came through discussions we had internally with some of the folks at the county, some of the staff members at the county, as far as areas that had some challenges and what the various departments could do. And so this was one of the items we looked at, was the transportation aspect, and that's when we went out for this. We did engage the transportation equity, the racial justice committee, the transportation subcommittee. We have talked to them. We've talked to folks at the city of Peoria. The health department have been involved in the evaluation of the qualifications and in the when we put out the RFP. So we have already engaged some of those folks there, but it came from internal discussions a couple years ago, actually.
Any other questions? Coin for a vote on this resolution. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Ayes have it. And moving on to our basic, our last. Oh, I'm sorry. We got have a motion here. First of all, to hear the report and recommendation by our state's attorney's office, and need a motion on that to put it on the floor. Motion by Betty, seconded by Mr. Kelch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It remains the recommendation of the state's attorney's office that all previously held minutes continue to be held, as the need for confidentiality still exists, and to destroy the executive session audio recordings that are more than 2 years old, except for those that relate to pending litigation.
Any question to Jeannie? All those in favor of taking the recommendation of our learned counsel signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Ayes have it. We did have a discussion by Becca on the solar projects, and she is going to come back with more information to our committee. And right now, they're looking at solar in 3 different areas. One of them being the highway department, one of them being the Health and Human Services area, And I'm trying to think. The other one was the juvenile.
And Becca's actually here today,
Was
Mr. Chairman,
Becca here?
and she's prepared to,
Okay, Becca.
give the committee a presentation.
All right. Thank you. You know what, Becca? I didn't look over there. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I was absent last month, so I apologize. This is a month later. It was on your agenda last month, but I was ill and unable to attend to give you this information. So here today to do it, and I'm happy to do that. So late last year, administration and myself met with a local solar developer to look at those 3 properties that you mentioned, juvenile detention, highway, and the HHS campus. To consider making use of the Illinois Solar for All program, because we're a not-for-profit public sector, and then also all 3 of those locations do fall in environmental justice communities. The cost to do solar at those locations is, if we use a power purchasing agreement, would be 0 upfront cost from the county. What I'm looking for today, I'll tell you a little bit more, I guess, about the Illinois Solar for All program. I'm distracted by the fact that Teams audio continues to ring on my phone. Sorry. All 3 of those locations, there's a 95 kilowatt array proposed for highway, juvenile detention, 450 kilowatt, and HHW, it's dependent on, the building specs, and once those are done and we can estimate energy needs, approximately 300 kW for there. All 3 of those locations, it's about 85 to 90% offsite of annual energy usage. A lot of energy improvements are in place at Juvenile Detention Center, the jail. They're continuing to occur, but that's a kind of a safe area to land. Again, with a power purchasing agreement, there'd be 0 upfront cost from the county at all. And then we would get a reduced rate on that generation. We would still use net metering, as I know a number of you are familiar with that, and we would set it either for April or for October, depending on the building and the usage, and how we're using that electricity in that building. So that would keep our costs down, with the overall cost being about 65% cheaper than what we're doing now, even with our great aggregation prices. The cost of electricity just continues to increase, or is going to stay a little higher than it was a few years ago, or a year ago. So what we're looking for today is request for moving forward with the solar developer, and then I'm happy to answer any questions or carry any questions I can't answer forward to the solar developer.
Jimmy?
Unless I'm missing it, do you have, so you have the kilowatts listed, but do you have a detailed map of where they are going on the properties?
We have some ideas of locations have been identified, but nothing is set yet. To the jail, it is the east of the property, like right on the other side of the track. And then for highway, it's am I saying that right? West, yeah, west of the track. And then for highway, it's east of the location, kind of in front of like where the gravel and all that stuff is, or where the ground arrays would be. And then for Health and Human Service, it would be roof-mounted array, most likely.
And then, so on the purchase agreement versus the county purchase, do we have, so that all changed and you have it in there, the Inflation Reduction Acts, where government entity can actually receive direct credits. Do we know, obviously it's upfront money, but then we get paid once it's energized,
Yeah.
so do we know what our out-of-pocket costs do we know the cost-benefit analysis between the two on a numbers break?
I can bring that to you next month for sure. We're given some preliminary numbers, but again, I'm just looking for, sort of approval to move forward, and then happily we'll bring that. It is 30% credit back plus some other attachments because we're an environmental justice community and that sort of thing. There's a little bit of more incentive, and that incentive comes right at generation. But then we also are required to sign, an agreement for that we would be managing and producing those solar RECs. So it's a little different with the Solar for All program.
Go ahead.
Becca, my question is related to the anticipated lifespan of the solar array and what portion of that anticipated lifespan would be covered by a warranty.
So with the power purchasing agreement, again, I will confirm this before next month. The lifespan for the cells, the panels themselves is 25 to 30 years. Not exactly sure which 25 or 30, but within 25 to 30, all of the maintenance and handling of the array entirely, the insurance and the operation of it would be handled by the developer should we move forward with the power purchasing agreement. But that is the expected lifespan. Many, are reaching that and still continuing to go, even older panels. But 25 to 30 is guaranteed.
Thank you.
Any other? Go ahead, Jimmy.
So under the first proposal, there's no rent agreement to us. It's us entering into an agreement where we're purchasing directly the power.
From the developer. They would own and operate it.
So, and then also, are we looking at typically like what we've zoned where we would be building a chain link fence with potentially barbed wire around it?
I'm not exactly sure about that part of it, and I'm happy to take that to the developer and see what they would recommend.
So I'm wondering maybe if nobody's opposed and that's what you're asking, if it might be best to actually have Hawk, the developer, make a presentation of what, like, so
Correct.
we can visualize what we're seeing
Yes.
and actually break down some numbers to see if this is cost benefit.
Yeah, correct, Mr. Dillon. I think what we're looking for today is some consensus amongst the committee that you're good with us actually taking the next step and collecting that additional detail, that additional information to bring back to you. If the consensus is you don't want to do solar on any of our properties, that's totally fine, and we'll abandon this initiative. But if there's a consensus that we want to pursue this and try and lower some of our energy costs, then we'll be prepared to bring back the local solar developer that we've been working with and talking to, and with a more robust and formal presentation that will answer a lot of these questions.
So do we also have a staff report, like we had done a few years ago about, like from maybe Mark Little or his team about future space needs? Not knowing where this land is going to be used, we went through this exercise before where we would landlock ourselves on potential things for 30 years that...
Right. I've seen the preliminary or suggested locations from the solar developer of the arrays, and at this point in time, based on what I know of what could be in the pipeline for the next decade plus, or 2 decades plus, I'm not overly concerned with their placement, but obviously we can show that to you, and we can talk about the placement of those arrays in relationship to other long-term plans that we have. And I think for the newer committee members and new board members, I think the elephant in the room for that point is at some point, hopefully not for several decades, but at some point we're probably going to have to build a new jail, and we don't want to put a solar array or any other type of structure in a location that's most advantageous to either build in addition to the jail or build an entirely new jail. Again, hopefully that decision is multiple decades away, but it is going to happen at some point in the future.
One last question. Sorry, I'm full of them. So, being that we also approved some multiple solar projects to developers around there in the community solar, where we could sign up for subscription rates on that, what is that rate compared to the 65% discount here? Just saying, I know we've talked when Trajectory was making things that you're going to buy that at a discounted rate. So is that 55% discounted rate and we're only gaining 10% because we're going to have about 40 acres of solar going in right next to the facility anyway that we didn't have a ton of neighborhood opposition on, but I'm just curious about if you have those 40 acres, you stick this acreage here, we basically have surrounded the jail with solar.
Right, and so, Mr. Dillon, the acreage that we have in the community solar program, we would be able to, use some of the energy generated or purchase some of the energy generated by that array. This that we're talking here is behind the meter, so it obviously a different program. Looking at this, we're not talking about for these 3 sites. We're not talking about acres and acres of land. We've got currently inside the fence line at the jail, we've got, I think, a 20 or a 25 kW solar array. Obviously the one at the for the highway department and juvenile detention will be bigger than that, but we're talking a pretty small area as opposed to 10 to 20 acres worth of solar here. But we will do that analysis and bring back that information to see what the cost differential between the two is.
Matt?
So today we're voting on just to run the numbers, correct? We're not voting to build nothing, right?
Correct.
All right.
Basically, they're looking at us to say, do you want to go ahead with this?
Correct. I just,
Okay.
all the stuff Jimmy's discussing, we're gonna, I'm sure, hash out through the way.
Well, yeah, there's a ton of unanswered questions that we need to get more detailed information, and we're aware of that. We anticipated all the questions that came out today, and I think provided there's a consensus to keep moving ahead, we'll do that, and we'll be able to come back with a much more robust presentation at a future meeting to that'll answer all those questions and then some.
Jim?
One last thing while I was thinking, did you say the Health and Human Service campus, that would be on roof and ground mounted?
We're looking at just roof at this point, unless ground needs to be used, but the plans seem to change. But at this point, I believe it's all roof.
Yeah, currently the HHS campus would be roof mounted only.
That building's going to occupy that big of a space that it's because 450 would be about 5 acres.
Wait.
So you're talking 300 would be.
So
Not be
I mean
offset for that.
the current footprint of the building is between 49,000 and 50,000 square feet. Not all of that would be usable as a solar array. So I think that project has been going through value engineering, and that's a number that is smaller than what the solar developer has in their information packet when they put this together a couple months ago. So that 300 kilowatt number, I think, is obviously an estimate and is probably going to be less, but because at this point we're still trying to calculate what the actual energy load of the new building is going to be. We're not, we're still working through that as part of the design process.
And I should know this too, but so no green energy was. This sounds like a separate thing than actual in the design of the health campus. So green energy to actually have a behind the meter solar or something was that part of the original design group and specs that this should have been built into a budget and take the credits through that versus something separate? Just seems odd. We're going to build a new thing here. Like, why wouldn't that have been in the design specs for roof load, what type of material we're using?
So
it's all
it is.
designed.
We just don't have that detail yet. It's in there. The structure's been is being designed to accommodate the load on the roof for a roof-based solar array. It's a policy decision as to whether or not you want to incorporate it into the construction or you want to do it after the fact.
So the buildings are going to be wired correctly to reverse.
That is correct. Yep.
Terry?
Great question, Mr. Ruland. The answer to your question is undetermined at this moment in time. So that's a decision point that still needs to be made.
Any other questions, comments? And this is not an official vote of any type, but what are your feelings in regards to pursuing this particular project? I don't need
Just a consensus. Does anybody have any strong objections to what we're doing, or anybody feel strongly that we should abandon this process and, not look at it whatsoever, or keep going down the road and develop more information and bring back more information to you?
I think the Peoria County needs to be a trendsetter, a leader in adopting the technology, make it at some point in our future, we should assume that it will be standard operating procedure for any new buildings, whether it's residential or institutional like ours. This is an opportunity for us to learn something. We're not spending any money to pursue it, at least not in direct investment. This is the efforts of our people studying further along this line. I think we'd be remiss to not follow up on this, to have enough information to make good, solid decisions.
I would like to see us progress forward with this. Particularly, I like the fact that we're speaking a lot of the solar energy, and that is definitely time. We're at a place in time where we need to pursue that and go along with that to grow, because that will soon be the time. So I am in agreement with this. As moving forward, it doesn't hurt us to get more information, as Terry suggested, and going forward.
Danny, did you want to say anything?
I agree with like what Matt said right there. As long as it's not going to cost us anything right now, I think you ought to pursue it.
Matt?
I definitely think we need to pursue. We just, like I say, there's a lot of the unanswered questions we need to work out, but for sure keep working on it.
Jim?
Coach, another quick question. So out of those 3 properties that were identified, then I know we have 2 potential roof projects down at the main campus here, but was the roof space that we have down here calculated into those?
So we did look at the courthouse. There's enough shade from the taller buildings around us that is cast that doesn't make solar very viable on this building.
Then another property that we had, I believe is it jointly owned, but or do we own it, the parking deck outright? But you have the space above the parking deck.
So parking, for those of you that aren't familiar, the Hamilton Square parking deck across the street, Caterpillar owns the land. We own the parking structure, and Caterpillar owns the office building above the parking structure.
But does that property fit into the same thing about too much shade? Because you see in other cities where on top of parking structures they build.
Look, Caterpillar right down here has put a solar array on top of their parking structure, but they aren't getting any shade being cast. I mean, we identified three county properties that we thought would be quick, easy wins. If we want to go back and take a more holistic and look at it, we can certainly add to the list of properties that we investigate and bring back more information on without question. Leave that up to the solar experts in terms of what is possible on each of the properties.
Yeah, I know we have the question of the election commission coming up too, but that's a fairly large roof footprint.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can, anything we can do, like Terry and them all said, if we can bring down our true energy costs at any of the facilities with little to no money out of us, it's a no-brainer for all these as we struggle with higher costs.
Sharon? As chairman, I'd say that the consensus is that we should pursue this project because it seems to be very worthwhile for us, and that the people that are responsible for bringing this back to us are going to probably be asked a lot of questions because most of you seem to have some depth of knowledge in this area, and I hope to hear these questions answered that will benefit our county, because that's what we're all working for, is to benefit this county. Okay. We have our last item here, miscellaneous. I've got something that I'm going to present at this time, and it dates back to the Veterans celebration that was held downtown back in November. And I'd like to have Kelvin and Mark, since you're part of this, because you're the supervisor. Thanks. This is from the American Legion. Is it on? Okay, thanks. I better put my glasses on first. This is from the American Legion. Certificate of Appreciation. This certificate of appreciation is gratefully presented to Peoria County Courthouse grounds crew for their participation in the 70th Peoria Veterans Day Parade Ceremony. We are honored to have your presence to show the public our nation's best. We sincerely appreciate your outstanding volunteer service to our community. Presented by American Legion Post Number 2. This 11th day of November in the 2022nd year of our Lord and the 103rd year of our national charter, Gary Hall, Veterans Day Parade Chairman, and James Ulrich, Commander of Peoria Post 2. Thanks, guys. But they do. They really do. There's been some problems in the past, and these guys have straightened everything out for them. I had a lot of comments from veterans. Okay, miscellaneous. Anybody else with miscellaneous? Jim?
Amy, I'm putting you on the spot like I asked you. Just so I thought the board would know. So in some years past, we've had for the township road commissioners when we let stuff and about getting into bonding. And Amy, I know working with Mr. Windish and whatever, and Jeff had talked about hearing some concerns about trying to get it out earlier. So I just thought I'd so the board understands the process.
Thank you, Mr. Dillon. So, as I mentioned earlier, the County Highway Department oversees the township motor fuel tax on behalf of the road commissioners. So we work closely with them for materials and contractual items. One of the things is the seal coating projects that they do in their respective townships. We organize a lot of those road commissioners, their contracts, so we can go out to letting to get the prices for the seal coating work that the townships do in the summer. Usually we get late spring, early summer bid lettings. We worked really hard after some feedback. We got some feedback from some contractors, and the road commissioners have been very helpful in us getting with IDOT and getting the approvals so we could go to an earlier letting this year to get the best prices from the contractors. So we've gotten all the information from the respective townships. We're getting it approved by IDOT right now. We hope to go to a bid letting in late January, early February with a late February committee, the information before this committee, and then 1st of March, a contract with the full county board so we can get to construction earlier than later. So really appreciate everybody who's worked on it. We've had a lot of folks in the room that have helped us with that, so we do appreciate it and hope we get some good prices this year.
Coach, I just wanted to publicly thank Amy and Jeff and her team. I know Jenny worked hard on this too. I know it took a lot of work to get to this point, but hopefully we see some results. But I know it took some time. I just wanted to publicly recognize you for the hard work that your team put in.
Anybody else for miscellaneous? Then this meeting is adjourned.